This morning, my question, do we value the lives of young black men, plus the women making the case to fight for their country? And AIDS in 2012, the young people at risk. But first, how the president is playing Godfather and making Republicans an offer they better not refuse. Good morning. I'm Melissa Harris Perry. It's December 1st, just 1 month until the deadline for the so-called fiscal cliff. And the drama is building. Just check out what House Speaker John Boehner had to say at the end of this week.
The White House spends 3 weeks trying to develop a proposal, and they send one up here that calls for $1.6 trillion in new taxes, calls for a little, not even $400 billion in cuts, and they want to have this extra spending that's actually greater than the amount they're willing to cut. I mean, it was not a serious proposal. And so right now we're almost nowhere.
No, Mr. Boehner, you've got it all wrong. It is a serious proposal, really serious. Godfather serious. Watching the D.C. drama this week convinced those of us in Nerdland that President Obama must be a fan of the Francis Ford Coppola masterpiece, because he seems to be channeling the Godfather. No, I'm not suggesting that Speaker Boehner is about to wake up next to a severed horse's head. But remove the lethal components, and there are valuable negotiating lessons that the president seems to be picking up on, like this one.
My father taught me many things here. He taught me in this room. He taught me, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
Well, President Obama has definitely been keeping his opponents close at hand. Lunch with Mitt Romney, a midweek summit with business leaders who supported Romney, including millionaire Republican backers, the CEOs of Marriott, AT&T, and State Farm. And of course, meeting after meeting after meeting with Speaker John Boehner and Republican leaders. With this strategy, President Obama keeps his opponents from being able to claim that he's unreasonable or stonewalling. Heck, I have y'all over every day, he can claim. But it also ensures that they know where he stands in the Oval Office. Returned there for another 4 years by the American people, which is why the president has been reminding his coalition of this.
But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again.
You see, President Obama is letting his electoral coalition or his family know that now is the time to hang together tightly. Rather than allow Republicans to pick off vulnerable, nervous, or personally ambitious members of the Democratic coalition, he is getting the family in line. He reached out to voters to do their part in continuing the campaign, calling on all Americans to raise awareness about the fiscal cliff, to get in touch with their congressmen, to tweet #My2K, letting lawmakers know how you want them to vote. But here he was doing exactly this in Small Businessville, Pennsylvania, just yesterday.
It's not acceptable to me, and I don't think it's acceptable to you, for just a handful of Republicans in Congress to hold middle-class tax cuts hostage simply because they don't want tax rates on upper income folks to go up. All right? That doesn't make sense.
So in addition to rounding up the voters, he deployed Tim Geithner to the Hill, kind of like the Dawn's consigliere Tom Hagen, the messenger. And you just know that Leader Pelosi is letting the House Democrats know they better not pull a Fredo during negotiations. Like Michael Corleone laying down his terms, the president's offer was this: $1.6 trillion in tax increases, a hefty $50 billion in mortgage relief, infrastructure investments, and an extension of the unemployment insurance, and a deferral of cuts to Medicare payments to physicians. And oh yeah, no more debt ceiling fights, because he's just going to take that one off of Congress's plate altogether. And yeah, there's a claim about $400 billion in entitlement savings, but those carry no guarantee and are pushed off another year. Right about the time those members of Congress will need to start their re-election bids. Not such a good time to cut Medicare. Once these details were made public, it was clear that the president is indeed a student of the Dawn.
Senator, you can have my answer now if you like. My offer is this. Nothing. Not even the fee for the gaming license, which I would appreciate if you would put up personally.
See, the consequences of the fiscal cliff are real. But from a political perspective, President Obama is holding all the cards here. If he does nothing, the Bush-era tax cuts expire, raising revenue. Spending cuts will bring down the debt and possibly help secure Social Security and Medicare. And apparently, the president thinks that he's making an offer Republicans can't refuse. Joining me at the table today is MSNBC contributor Joy Reid, who's also managing editor of thegrio.com, CNBC contributor Dan Dicker. He's a principal partner at Merrick Block, and Laura Flanders is the host and founder of GritTV.org. Hi, thanks to all of you for being here. So is this in fact a new President Obama, Laura? Is the kind of negotiating tactics that we're seeing now something that wasn't happening in the first term?
Well, I want to see that severed head, actually. I think I'm really looking forward to that, and I love this whole Don Corleone thing.
Can I just tell you the severed head was a real horse's head? Like, I know this was one of those things that we learned. Apparently, they got in touch with the dog food factory. Okay. I'll put that one aside. But yes, it's sort of horrifying. Yeah.
Well, I don't think anything that the administration is doing this time is going to get PETA on their case.
Yes.
But I do think that there's a repetition here of a sort. Remember, after the last election, in the first term, there was this idea that you were going to go to the country, keep the grassroots momentum that had brought Obama to office going after the election. Two things happened. One, people kind of felt that fizzled out. Mm-hmm. A lot of people said, wait a minute, we were good enough to invite to the dance, but not good enough to dance with. Mm-hmm. Others felt, wait, we're being brought in not organizing for America, but organizing for Obama. Do we really have a voice, for example, in the healthcare debate? And so I think this time they're trying to do it differently. The question is, what will the administration find as it goes out into the country? Are its priorities in this discussion about the deficit the people's priorities that brought the administration to office? And what will they do at some of those meetings as people say, well, we also want to talk about raising the minimum wage. We also want to talk about Walmart workers and the condition of work in this country, and that stimulus spending, maybe it's not big enough. So I think that there is definitely an effort to redo some of the mistakes of the last term, but I think they're in the same perilous situation in a sense.
Well, so it's interesting when you ask, are these the same priorities? So we're looking at the $1.6 trillion in tax increases, the $50 billion in stimulus spending, and control of the debt ceiling. I think those are like the big power moves. Does that jive with what people want here?
These aren't new numbers, by the way, Melissa. These are the numbers that the president originally talked about the original time 2 years ago, and then a year before that in terms of bringing down the deficit, his plan for bringing down the deficit, which got nothing from Boehner. I like the way that you're putting this because in the first term it seemed to me that Obama was very conciliatory towards Republicans. Right. He wanted to create a grand coalition, and he learned something in his first term. That just doesn't work out. So in fact, it may be a little stark to put it in Godfather terms, but you're right. He's offering them, for right now, he's offering them nothing. See how you like it. This, because we tried it the other way for 4 years, and I've gotten nothing back in return but blockage. So let's try it this way, see how it goes.
It suggests the possibility of political cover, that he makes the big offer, right? If this is not the Godfather, this is like a used car negotiation, right? Then he's lowballing, but giving them plenty of cover so that even if they get to say $1 trillion in taxes as an increase, then the Republicans can say that they talked him down. Is it really an offer for nothing, or is it that more sort of political cover that he's offering?
No, I think it is the latter. I think it is more political cover. And I think if you look at the contrast with 2010, they were in a different situation, right? In 2010, there were things that Obama needed. He had a re-election coming up, so it was in his interest, in a sense, to continue the Bush tax cuts and not do anything that would halt the recovery, right? He also wanted that big payroll tax cut, which was essentially stimulus.
And
he wanted the debt ceiling increase. He wanted the START treaty. He wanted to do don't ask, don't tell. So they crammed a lot of stuff into that lame duck session. And remember, Republicans had just cleaned up in that midterm. So Republicans had the leverage. Obama had the needs. Well, the situation now is entirely reversed.
Right.
Obama does not face another re-election. It's Republicans that have needs because they've got Grover Norquist and these people on the right nipping at their heels saying do not raise rich people's taxes. And so they have a need, and now it's Obama that's got the leverage. So I think we are seeing a reversal. And look, Democrats, the base, are not in a position, are not used to being winners, right?
I know, right?
Have this loser mentality. It's like, Wait, we're the boss? Like,
Yes.
we can do what we want? And I think Democrats are feeling excited because they actually have it over the
But this is exactly the Fredo danger. I mean, I agree. I actually think that in a certain way, progressives tend to have a preference for being on the outside.
Right.
We're really used to losing. We almost prefer the sniping from the outside mentality and position. And part of the danger of that is when you finally find yourself in a position of power, you got to be careful not to Fredo out, right? Not to sort of go for the individual piece that then brings down the whole house of cards. On the other hand, we do have this question about what do the people want and how, in fact, President Obama holds his coalition together. So we'll talk a lot more on exactly this after the break and what happens when the president goes to the mattresses. You know, bring the cannoli.